For the first time in over 50 years, the World Design Congress is coming back to London in September, and the theme of the conference is Design for Planet. The effects of climate change are more evident than ever, and this global crisis needs a global response, which designers and commissioners of design all around the world have a critical role to play in. So the conference landing page also declares. While the jewelry industry is but a small fragment of the design discipline, we too have a responsibility to reflect on our impact and map out a better future. My guest, a designer, maker, content marketer, and member of the Fair Luxury Collective, is an active voice in sustainability discussions. As co-organiser of the State of Sustainability in the Jewellery Industry conference in collaboration with the Goldsmith Centre, she is part of a movement to map the industry's progress and advocate for action to build a more sustainable future for the field. For the BAJ podcast today, I'm excited to welcome Rebecca Maddock. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
So, Rebecca, to start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
So I'm sure as you listen through, you'll be able to tell from my accent, I am Irish and I moved to London after uni, and London is definitely now home. That was a bit of a surprise. That was not intentional. It just kind of happened. So I am definitely a designer maker at heart. Working with my hands is just such a passion, and that's something that I've worked at pretty much my whole career in the industry. But I also love sharing my knowledge with the industry. I've been in it now 11 years and I've built up quite a diverse knowledge base and skill set, and I think that's where Fair Luxury comes in. I work with a lot of knowledge sharing organizations. I'm a Freeman in the Goldsmith Centre. I work with organizations like Bright New Gems, trying to get new people into the industry, kickstart their careers, because if we don't help the younger people or the newer people, where is our industry going? So when I moved here, that was so important to me. I had no contacts here. I didn't really even know what Hatton Garden was. And I really felt like that stymied my career early on. I was daunted by it. It can be a very intimidating, closed door industry. And that is something that I and my Fair Luxury teammates and so many other people in the industry are trying to tackle. So that's why I've decided to work with small businesses, like I said, sharing all that knowledge and trying to open doors for people. So at the minute, I work with independents, small businesses. I have some regular clients. I have some one-offs. I offer things like mentoring, brand audits, content creation, photo shoots. I offer so much. I like to think of it as I'm the right-hand woman for a small business owner. I help weave together all those various threads of a brand so that you can focus on what you want to do instead of all of the things that you're less impressed by. And I feel like I must have hit on something last year in 2024. I was a finalist for a Supplier of the Year at the NAJ Awards. And I think I'm right in saying I was the only one person business on the slate. And to be alongside incredible businesses and really long-standing businesses, to have that kind of honor in my first year was pretty insane, but exciting.
Before we delve more into your career, I want to ask you what attracted you to the subject of jewelry in the first place.
I think if you would ask anybody from my childhood, I was the kid with beads and making all that stuff. But I really felt going into uni, my passion was graphic design. And I was going to be a graphic designer. And I was really fortunate to attend NCAD in Dublin, the National College of Art and Design. They have the first year you get to try out multiple different things. And I did my few months in graphic design and thought, oh, no, no, thank you. It was so two-dimensional and so much kind of work on the computer, and I got to do so many other things: printmaking, ceramics, glass, and metals. And there was just something about metalworking and then later on jewelry design that was just so appealing. Seeing something come to life through blood, sweat, and tears. The idea that somebody would wear that with pride forever. That's the really beautiful thing about jewelry, is it will probably last forever, especially if you look after it. it's not going anywhere. And to know that those pieces that you put out into the world have that future ahead of them long after you're gone, I think that that's just such a beautiful story. And in uni, then once I got into the faculty of design and metalwork, I won a couple of awards, a Newbridge Silverware. That's probably not a name that many people know in the UK, but it's a big deal at home, and it was great to win that alongside a few of my other peers. And then I won a Future Makers Award, which is again quite a big deal at home. So I figured, well, I must have a bit of a knack for this. There must be something in this. And then, like I said, I came over to London straight after graduating with my degree show. The whole class of us came over for new designers, and that was amazing. I think I'm right in saying we were the very first year to do it. And there was a little bit of, I think I'm right in remembering this, there was a little bit of pressure of like, well, if this goes well, we'll do it again. But if you muck it up, then and maybe the next year won't get to do it. So, and it's so great to now see graduating classes doing that as well. But I just didn't go home after new designers. I had friends over here. I couch surfed for a while, and now I have a husband and a home. So yeah, it's kind of been one of those journeys that has fallen into place as I go.
A show is an opportunity to showcase your work, but it's also an opportunity to scout out a location. It's an opportunity to meet the people that are local there who come to visit. It's quite a powerful moment.
It really
It can
is. Yeah,
be.
it's so amazing that these things exist. And unfortunately, it's not something that exists in Ireland. And that does break my heart a little bit that I just don't see having this career at home. I would one day love to see a similar strength in the industry in Ireland. And there are obviously some incredible designer makers over there. But yeah, I feel like London and the UK is the place to be for the industry at the minute.
You've been working for over 10 years in the jewelry industry, and in 2023, you decided to found and build a business to support others to grow their businesses. Could you tell us a bit more about these sort of different roles that you take on to support and how you gained your skills and what drove you to make this type of decision and focus on storytelling and marketing instead?
I was quite lucky early on. I landed my first proper role in the UK within the jewellery industry. It was a bit of an odd one. I was essentially a designer, maker, and shop girl for a brand, and it was so broad. So I was primarily making and designing ranges of jewelry to stock in the boutique, but I was also working with other designers stocking their work. So I got a little bit of view into wholesale there, and I was selling other things as well and dealing with the customers directly, and creating content and putting it out on Instagram. And back in the day when Instagram was a totally different beast, and you felt like you could figure out how to do it very easily. Not so much now. But I think that having that space to put something out under a different name, covertly almost, not very many of the customers would have necessarily known I had made these pieces, which kind of empowered them to be very honest. And I got a lot of feedback. And also, I would also sometimes just pretend that I was a shop girl and it was not my jewelry that they were being really rude about. But I gained that knowledge very early on of what customers want and don't want, how to present things, how to sell, how to tell those stories of the piece. I think it all coming from my one source of it was my idea, I executed it, and I sold it, whether that was in store or wholesale, I think really helped me form that kind of tapestry of everything working together. So I think it started there, even though I might not have been aware of that then. I kind of didn't realize that until I look back, that having to design within a brand, within a voice that was maybe not my own, can be quite tricky. But yeah, that was kind of where it all started. So I've worked with really large heritage brands and much smaller, e-coms brands, and definitely within the kind of larger businesses, primarily I would have been marketing, content creation rather than the design side of things. And I learned so much about e-commerce, newsletters, email marketing, social media, tying all of those comms together and understanding a different customer. It was a totally different customer than the first place I had. They had a much broader customer base as well. There were 5 shops at the time. So each shop almost had its own personality. And when I would create graphics or anything for online or any of the marketing, we would have to kind of consider how those different customer bases worked together. So then at this point, I'm gaining quite a broad mixture of skills. I am not specializing at all. If anything, I am broadening my skill set. Um, Moved on to a really incredible eco-friendly e-commerce brand then. And with any small business, you do a little bit of everything. So I was primarily involved with designing, making, creating content and e-commerce, but also the wholesale side of things and the branding side of things, social media. So again, it was kind of all of these threads, getting to see them all working together, which I think a lot of people don't have the opportunity to, especially within the jewellery industry, because you are a bench worker or you are on the marketing team or the sales team. You know, you very rarely tend to cross those barriers. And I suppose I was lucky enough to have a view of all those. But at the time, I felt like maybe it was not a good thing. I thought I've kind of ruined my future almost, because I'm never going to be head of production and design. I'm never going to be head of marketing. Have I made a massive mistake not niching down? And then I thought, well, actually, no, this is a skill set that is a little bit rare. This is a strength and not a weakness. So when I had the surprise opportunity to kind of use all of these skills, instead of thinking, all right, I need to go get a design job or a marketing job or a sales job, I decided, no, I'm going to take the risk, put my knowledge to the test, and hope that it works. And you know, it has. I think it is so far. Obviously, everything evolves, but I'm still learning, and it's so beautiful being able to deal with individuals. I think a lot of us, we become very entrenched in what we know, and we then think everybody knows what we know, and what we know is really simple and really obvious. And it's really lovely talking to people and saying something, and you can see it click with them. They'd never thought about it that way. They would have never pictured themselves in this light, and you've kind of helped them with that light bulb moment. So yeah, it's really, really satisfying to get to use all of those skill sets.
And I really like the resources that you have on your website available.
Yeah, I don't really, obviously, I do need to pay my bills, but I definitely don't believe in education and resources being fully paywalled. I think I couldn't have accessed consultancy work when I was some of my clients' age or in their position in the career. So I really do feel it's important for me to continue to put out a few free resources. And, you know, my Instagram, some people say it should not be free. Like there's just so much on there. I never saw myself as a teacher, but I feel more and more that I am. And that's really great and exciting.
And a newsletter as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's wonderful that you want to spend the time to share your knowledge that way as well. Obviously, you've worked for an eco jewelry business and you're very passionate about sustainability. You're an active member of a number of collectives you mentioned, but it includes the Fair Luxury Group. Could you tell us a little bit more about the group and what it does?
I came across Fair Luxury when, like you said, I was working in a brand that was trying to be as ethical as it possibly could. And for small businesses, I think it's really tricky sometimes to access information. And Fair Luxury was one of those websites that just kept coming up as I Googled things, and, you know, different suppliers. I kept saying, oh, they're involved, or oh my God, this jeweler that I love is involved. Okay, this is a group of people that I want to be involved with. So they put out a call out for, you know, volunteers. It is all voluntary. And I kind of jumped on it. So as a collective, I suppose, Fair Luxury is a group of jewelers and tradespeople. You don't have to be a jeweler. You can be a gemstone supplier or an educator. Just a group of passionate people who are willing to put a little bit of time in, share their knowledge, like I said, volunteer their time because they are passionate about educating people. So quite a motley crew, but who have a passion for pushing the conversation forward. They have quite a long history. I am relatively new. I've only been involved about 3 years now, but their history dates back to, 10 years. if not even more. So they've done really a lot of work over the years. But as with anything, things change and people move in and out. And we saw the opportunity for, this year. It will be almost 10 years since Fair Luxury's first conference. It was in 2016, but the opportunity through the Goldsmith Centre came up to kind of have this almost anniversary conference and to just kind of get the ball rolling again. During COVID, they had paused all of they had been amazing for online and in-person events, but obviously in-person stopped. And it kind of just didn't resume after that. So it kind of felt like the stars and planets had aligned. And the Goldsmith Centre has just been incredibly supportive. And it was incredible to get to work with them. I think we put on a pretty good conference, if I don't say so myself.
Yeah, so the title of the conference was State of Sustainability in the Jewelry Industry. And I want you to tell us a little bit more. What were the intentions behind? So it was 10 years on. What did you hope to discuss, achieve? Who was there? Tell us more.
I think that we all know within this sphere, there are a lot of topics to cover and a lot of opinions that don't always align. And it can be really tricky to have these discussions in an open format where there isn't going to be any conflict. You aren't going to be called out on your vision and your beliefs. So I think that getting different perspectives into the room, again, like I said, there'd been a little bit of a hiatus almost on in-person events. So making sure that there was a broad set of voices in the room, because we are, as a jewellery industry, we are incredibly broad-minded and there are an unending amount of views on all the topics. So kind of having difficult discussions under the umbrella of, well, what has been happening, I think made it a little bit more accessible. Nobody necessarily felt like they had to fight their corner. We were talking about progress and framing it in, we had hoped, a positive way. We thought, well, maybe everyone will say, actually, the last 10 years has been horrendous and no progress has been made. But that was absolutely not what we found on the day. Whether it was attendees or our unbelievable panelists, I can't thank them enough for coming and sharing their time and their knowledge. I think the room was energized by the various topics, and there was some feedback that the topics were a little bit unusual. And I think we sometimes get caught in the trap of talking about mining and obviously an incredibly important topic, but there are so many other topics that don't often get coverage that they need. So we kind of set out from the start to cover topics that were a little bit more unusual. Having the industry the way it is now, greenwashing is rife, so that was definitely on the slate. We knew that something around the way we communicate with customers needed to be covered, and production was one of the most incredible discussions on the day as well. We had some unbelievable speakers, and they shared so much knowledge about what's going on within their various industries, whether that is becoming staff owned or all of the various improvements they've made in the technology and the resources and the machinery that they use. But also carbon footprints is a topic that everybody knows about. Everybody's heard of a carbon footprint, but I think that it doesn't seem tangible. It doesn't always seem like you can tackle it, especially for a small business owner who either works from home or works from a shared studio space. You can't do anything about how you use water or what electricity supplier you have or what bin collector you use. You're really stymied by wherever you can work. So I thought that was a really interesting conversation that, again, doesn't get talked about too much. And just broadening out the conversation past materials, I think, was important to the group. And as I say, materials is incredibly important, and I'm sure we will come back to those topics. But we thought as a bit of a revisiting of in-person events, we would shake it up a little bit and cover topics that don't always get the views that they need.
There were a lot of discussions and talks and presentations. What to you was one or two of the most impactful outcomes or discussions or points to make, maybe representative of the title. Like 10 years on, what is now the state of sustainability in the jewelry industry? Not an easy question.
I think I'm going to be a little bit unusual, and it's not a tangible thing. I think it was a point that came up from the production panel that all of the positive change was being led from within. It wasn't being led by customer demand. It was the CEOs or the staff within these manufacturers that said we need to move with the times without being forced to. I thought that that was a really beautiful way to think about it, because I think sustainability is a bit of a tricky word at the minute, but that kind of broad catch-all. It can be reactive. It can be an exercise in gaining a sale that's maybe not earned because it's in vogue at the minute. And I really thought that it was great for the other jewelers in the room and the other academics and businesses to hear that actually it is not, we are not being forced to make these changes. We are not behind the times. Some businesses are leading the way. And I think that kind of is a misconception sometimes within the jewellery industry, that we are awful and everything is really, the door is closed and everything is shrouded in mystery. But actually, the jewellery industry has been one of the most circular, I'm not necessarily going to say sustainable, but one of the most circular little economies in the world as an industry, because gold is never a waste product. It is never being thrown away in vast quantities. Customers do not throw away their fine jewellery. It doesn't end up in landfill. So I think that the overall sense of the state of sustainability in the industry these days is that it is positive and we are leading from within rather than reacting to the rest of the world.
Whilst we might not be the most sustainable industry, there are a few things that we have been able to preserve, like the recycling of gold and precious metals is something we've been doing for many years. We could do even better, but we have been. And I often think about localized production as well. We do have Hatton Garden, we have the Birmingham Jewelry Quarter. Those are places where things are made within a square mile of activity. And that's models of production that I think other producing industries could look at and learn from. They're at risk. We have to be honest about that. But it's nice to see both the positive and the negative of our fields, I would say.
Yes, there will always be more to do, and there will always be people who are incredibly driven towards improvement. And I think on occasion it's great to stand still for a second and just take a little bit of a look at what's behind us and applaud all the effort that has been made to get to where we are today. And I think that definitely happened at the conference.
You wrote a very interesting post following the conference on your website around greenwashing, or it talked about more things, but it also looked at greenwashing. Could you tell us a little bit more about this practice and why it is so damaging to sustainability initiatives and clarity around sustainability? And
I
yeah.
think that greenwashing is a really scary word, and I'm probably fortunate enough to not have met any makers or small businesses who intentionally greenwash. We think about greenwashing as huge corporations lying, really egregious lies, but it can be so much smaller than that. It can be the individual jeweler using phrases like locally sourced gemstones on their website. One of the first things that I do when I audit a brand, if a sustainability or ethics page on their website is present, is I go there, because it is really an indication of how much research people have done. And I think, well, unless you're using Blue John, you are not using a locally sourced gemstone. Just because your gemstone dealer happens to be in Hatton Garden or wherever does not mean that that's locally sourced. But I think that's not an intentional misnomer. That's just one of those things that a small business owner is so pressed for time, possibly has a full-time job, is just putting out things that sound really great to customers, and they have all the best of intentions, but just haven't taken the time to really interrogate themselves. I also recently wrote an article for a retail jeweler about this, and the quote that they pulled out was that sustainability should not be an exercise in SEO. And I said that because I think that I see that. And I am sure that I use words, sustainability, and all of those things are things that customers are searching for. And it is such an easy trap to use these words, because big businesses are massive brands that you think, how could you? Yes, you have impact reports. You are doing incredible work if you can work directly with mines, and this is great, and we need more of this. But sustainability, if I'm being very militant, can any product-based business be sustainable? Again, I think with fine jewelry especially, it's not a waste product. These products have that kind of heirloom quality, and they're not going anywhere. So it is definitely possible to be more on the sustainable side. But ultimately, we are selling a product, putting out more things into the industry, taking away from the earth. But you mentioned recycled metal there a minute ago, and again, there's been a proliferation of people using the phrase recycled. And then big arguments of, well, what does recycled mean? Is it pre-consumer? Is it post-consumer? Where is it recycled from? Does it come straight out of a mine through a factory and then be termed recycled? There was a kind of a petition to change the wording, that you could not use the word recycled because it's not a waste material. The definition of recycled is waste material. So it should be repurposed, remodeled. But again, because I work with small businesses, going back to that SEO, if you are a small ethical brand, very few of your customers are Googling repurposed gold jewelry. So there is a bit of a struggle of where the line is between what the industry, academics are saying we should do, and what is actually possible for small businesses. But in terms of greenwashing itself, like I said, very few small jewelers are using those words intentionally, but it's about moving forward. So when I work with them, I say, well, maybe we should change the language here. I'm more about being transparent over being perfect. Very few small businesses have the resources to tick all the boxes. It's incredibly difficult to do that. I know that the Positive Luxury, the Real Change report from 2025, they addressed this, that transparency was more important than saying you're sustainable, and how damaging to a brand it can be to be found out. And whether that's by a troll on TikTok or a customer asking really difficult questions that you cannot answer easily. A lot of people have asked me recently, like, well, how do they know if they are sustainable? And I think, well, if you have to ask the question, and if you are unable to really quickly kind of justify your choices, then maybe you need to take a little bit of a look, because again, it's a tricky thing. And not everybody can be perfect, and I don't think that should be the goal, because that's so discouraging for a small brand, especially, who's entering the industry thinking, oh, I need to be all of these things. I need to use fair trade and fair mined only. I need to use traceable gemstones only. I need to find a pearl supplier that has traceability. Like, these things are so tricky. And we should just encourage every little step.
Are there any changes that you personally would really like to see materialized in the near future so we have a more sustainable jewelry industry? What are the topics you think are really urgent to still be addressed?
It's going to roll. If you ask me a year prior to this or a year in the future, it will roll. This is not going to be something that is suddenly like, okay, we've arrived. We are perfect now. That's just not going to be the way that it works. But the one thing, and maybe I am a little bit biased because I work so much on language and storytelling, and I did host the greenwashing panel at the conference. But I think that language, like we mentioned, recycled, needing a new definition, the language that we all use is, again, we are a broad worldwide industry, and we need a dictionary almost so that we're all on the same page. I know that CIBJO is working on their blue book, which has a whole load of centralized terminology and nomenclature, which is great. But and there are several groups in the UK doing similar. I know the RJC has similar in their standards, but I think all getting on the same page. And whether that page is from that blue book or from some other resource, I think that we need to collaborate and maybe go beyond the UK jewellery industry and involve especially the US and Europe. And also, like, Africa needs to be more involved. All of these places that our materials come from, and we would be nothing without, all of these countries need to be involved. And obviously, that is blue sky thinking. And we are not going to solve it here today. But yeah, I think if I had to choose one, it would be language. It is so scary for a small jeweler or even big jewelers putting together their marketing materials, big, huge campaigns. You see massive retailers being called out all the time, not necessarily for eco claims, but for anything, any little slip of wording. It can be really scary to put words out there. So some sort of shift in the language we use and the reaction to the language we use, it trying to foster learning rather than just putting people down and saying you're wrong. Re-educating people, I think, is super important.
Yeah, we have to also be very careful that certain organizations are sponsored by certain parties with certain interests. Language is currently being used to stifle certain markets or advantage certain markets over others, and we have to be, as small jewelers, definitely part of that discussion and be critical of the stuff that is given to us sometimes from these places. Sometimes it can be great, sometimes it can be fueled from an agenda, and we need to point those out.
100%. Yeah. And that's the tricky bit. I would never stand up and say, I am an expert at sustainable sourcing. There are unbelievable businesses and people doing things like that. I see myself more like a facilitator. I keep myself in the know and I help break it down into more simplistic ways of digesting the information. I'm kind of, yeah, I'm a facilitator rather than an academic. And I think especially for fair luxury, that was something that was needed. I did not have an agenda. I was open to every aspect of it. I wanted to hear all the pro and cons. Do I even mention lab grown diamonds? I wanted to hear it all and just kind of lap it up from all these incredible people and repackage it in a way that's more digestible for the industry at large. And that was a skill that I had that I was like, this is so valuable for this movement at this moment. We can get very insular. And I think topics within a closed door room, that's great. Let's hash them out. Let's debate them. But let's then also share our findings and our viewpoints openly.
I think really your voice and the brands that you're representing are very important in this space. Like from the ground up, these labels should come, not
Yeah, yeah,
top down
yeah.
from a sort of whoever has the most money, basically. Like it should work for all of us rather than be something that works for only few.
And I have no problem with big business kind of helping and facilitating and leading the way. Like you said, when other people's interests are being prioritized, that's where it gets tricky.
To any starting jewelers listening, do you have any tips? You've talked about things that you can do already, but what are your top tips for being more sustainable from the get-go and how they could contribute to a more sustainable industry, as well, being part of these debates, etc.?
I would be very excited that any jeweler wants to start off their career on the best foot instead of retroactively do it. I think a lot of brands have done that, which is great. Any step forward is great, but to build a business on ethics and on responsible sourcing or whatever is important to you is really laudable. And I think before you start that journey, you should ask yourself what's important to you. I think a lot of us sometimes think, well, what will sell? What do our customers want? And our customers come from what we want. A discussion kind of needs to be had internally of what is my guiding light if I am this jeweler who is starting my business. What is most important to me? And it's not going to be every single thing. That is definitely the inclination, is to want to be perfect straight away, but it's just not possible. And putting that pressure on yourself is just going to burn you out. So really looking whether you are climate and environmentally driven or whether you are driven by people. There are some incredible businesses out there that are making these choices and sticking with them. One that comes to mind is Virtue, a really incredible jewelry brand that works with charities across the world. Not, the materials and everything, that's not what they're focusing on. It's focusing on that giving back and that charity work for people. But then maybe brands like the Rockhound are using, again, silver and Fairmine gold plating together. So that is definitely focusing on materials. So I think you make your choice and you trust in your choice. And be able to stand up for it and don't be afraid to voice why you've made these choices. And every little step towards improving the industry is so valuable. So transparency over perfection would be my little sound bite for small businesses. You will not be perfect straight away, and there will be things that you cannot do, and just be honest. Just tell your customers, no, I have no idea where these pearls came from. I'm really sorry. That's obviously, if you're saying you're a sustainable jeweler, it's not great that you don't know where they're coming from, but be honest. Say, this is a really tricky subject, and I really want to improve my sourcing and sustainability going forward. But right now, for the price point my customer is willing to pay, they're not going to pay the premium for full provenance. So this is what I can do now. And in my own studio practice, I recycle and I do all the best that I can within what I can control. Yeah, that would probably be my advice.
As part of your business, or as part of the collectives you're working on, or as a designer maker, is there anything you are currently working on that you may be willing to share with us already that we could be looking forward to seeing from you in the future?
So I developed a concept called the 3 C's of branding, and that's kind of as opposed to the 4 C's of diamonds, but it's actually 5 C's now because certification is so important. Let's not forget certification. So that concept covers clarifying your brand mission and values, connecting with your audience, and then crafting your brand aesthetic. So that was my kind of thinking of how a brand can build, whether it needs to start from the start or whether it's, not growing in the way that a founder would like it to, or just not feeling very right, how to reassess your brand and go forward. So from that concept, I've developed a workshop, and I will be hosting that workshop. So if you sign up to my mailing list and my socials and everything, you'll see that. And that is great for, say, starting fresh in the new year, or even starting now. At the minute, we're kind of finishing up with Q3, moving into Q4. It should be a fairly quiet period in the jewellery industry. So now is a great time for people to look at, for example, my brand audit, and just set themselves up to have the best Christmas that they possibly can. Yeah, it's a great time. You've still got plenty of time before Christmas. Prepare. And I suppose for Fair Luxury as well, you will definitely see more from us. Again, it's another mailing list to subscribe to because we have things in the works, and we would obviously love to get people in the physical room or the online room, because all of these conversations are just so important. And everybody out there who's listening now, your voices are so important, whether you are nervous or excited. Sustainability should be something that you consider. And there is always help. Reach out if you're feeling worried. It doesn't have to be with me. There's incredible businesses who do this. So reach out and ask the questions and don't be afraid of sustainability more broadly.
Translating sustainable ideas on sustainability into real-world impact, moving beyond empty promises and unfounded labels, is the challenge of our time. The jewelry industry's impact on the environment remains substantial, and all of us have a responsibility to make it less so. This is, however, not always so easy to admit, envision, and enact, and we need to regularly take stock independently and collectively. Conferences such as the State of Sustainability in the Jewellery Industry are important examples, sharing good practice, debating improvements, and openly asking for more to be done. Thank you, Rebecca, for your time sketching out your own journey, sharing insights from the conference and the work you do as part of the Fair Luxury Collectives, and for joining me for the BAJ podcast today. We are really grateful to you for all your efforts and for your time.
Thanks so much, Sophie. It was such a pleasure.
Next month, I'll be joined by another guest, so watch this space to find out who it is. For now, this was Sofie Boons for the BAJ podcast episode titled Sustainable Reflections with Rebecca Maddock. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful day.